Hi, I'm Brad Power, and I'm the host of the Linnea Olson Hackathon. This is, I think, number 13, maybe. Um, and we've had a turn of events. If those of you who have not seen, Linnea has taken a turn for the worse. She's in the hospital. She's got, I had to look it up, pleural effusion, which I guess is liquid on the lung membranes. And she's got an infection, so she's getting IV and she's going to get it drained this morning. So she's just trying to relieve that suffering, but it's indicative of a turn for the worse and an urgency on finding her next treatment. So we've been talking about moving to this time, having a virtual molecular tumor board or a review board for her treatment options, review those treatment options and have that conversation. But I think what this turn of events has highlighted is a need to accelerate the path to that process, to that review board. And so it's kind of what's the critical path and how fast can we get there to get her next best treatment? Because what this turn of events means that maybe she's going to get kicked out of the current trial she's on. So she needs a next line of therapy, whatever that might be. So we need to, go through that process with a filter of that kind of urgency. And I'll just throw out a couple of ideas I had and then open it up for discussion. We've got a working document on treatment options. We've got a working document on people to invite as candidates to be on the review board. It's a question then of how soon could we convene that conversation? And part of the answer is we could do it on Slack, like it's 24/7, so we could just start having a conversation there. But the Zoom meeting where there's interaction between people is also a very positive tool, and it would be nice to have some version of that as soon as possible. And in email exchanges with Kimmery this morning, she was pointing out that the testing that we've just had done on Linnea's biopsy material is like a key input to that. Ideally, you want to know what the latest and greatest is on what's presenting. Is she still ALK positive? What other indications came out of that test? So it's kind of a critical path input. And we're trying to figure out what the status is on that Caris test. So trying to see if Linnea can ask about that, because we can't ask directly with Caris. They have to respond either to her physician or to Linnea. So, but she's incapacitated at the moment. So anyway, so there's a little bit of an open question there. But I'd really like to open the conversation or focus the conversation around what's the fastest way that we can get help to Linnea in the form of what's her best next treatment. And I'd like to maybe cue Kimmery, because Kimmery, you've been quite involved in thinking this through. Maybe you could open the conversation.
Well, maybe I'm the most opinionated is really another way of wording it. But yeah, I'm concerned about the timing. We need to do this as soon as humanly possible. And I guess all along in thinking about what we've been calling a tumor board or the next sort of step, I don't know how it worked in other hackathons, but my concern is getting people to the table quickly and sort of even just grounding them and giving them enough background as to what this is, so they don't think it's just a bunch of people going rogue and they don't want to be affiliated with it. So maybe some of your learnings from how you were able to bring people together before would be helpful, because otherwise a little bit of cold calling would be necessary, unless we all have contacts with the people that we put on that list. I know that I don't. Even people that I nominated, I don't have necessarily direct contact to sort of get them to the table. So that, I guess that's a question I put out there for the group, is how do we convene this as soon as possible?
Yeah. And so the answer to your question about what we did before, I think the participants it was for Bryce Olson, and the participants knew Bryce or had been briefed, and so had gotten his medical history. And it was a handful of people that really mattered, and it was including his lead physician, his lead oncologist, Raina McKay, so that if there were any questions on medical history, she was, in the conversation at the table. So we didn't have to prep people. There were no cold calls. They were pretty much, they'd been informed. They hadn't actively participated, but they had, because Bryce was such an active patient, he had already spoken with them one-on-one. So we would need to do that. So as we send out any cold call invitations, we would need to, as others have agreed, and I think it would be part of the process, we need to then brief them. We have all the information that they would need. We have medical history, we have presentations, we have and you can dive into the CARIS information. The information on Citizen. So there's as much information as people want. It's really a question probably of just talking them through it a bit and introducing them.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can I add a comment though? This is what I said before. I'm just concerned. I agree. Kimmery's forceful in a good way, I think. And I think we need to talk to or get her to talk to MGH. They've got to be developing the next steps for her. And even if we say tomorrow morning, we got everyone here and looked through all the data and had a recommendation, she's going to then have to go to the MGH people and say, hey, look, these people on this hackathon told me this is what I should do. I'm speaking kind of colloquially here, but they've got to be coming up with a plan for her, I would assume. Her attending oncologist and the whole care team and pathologists at MGH. It seems like I don't want to circumvent what they're doing there and put her in a position where she's getting conflicting advice or duplicative advice. I don't know the right word, but anyway, that's sort of my concern.
I was going to kind of comment along similar lines is, do we know if Dr. Lin herself has agreed to be a part of any next tumor board? Because what we could do is sort of shortlist, let's say one of each specialty. And it's likely that Dr. Lin has some connections to these folks too, or we could skew it towards folks we would know she would have connections to or could easily reach out to, and then sort of, kind of put a little bit of onus on them to do this on Linnea's behalf.
Yeah, so in her message, which I presume most of you saw that I shared, she said, and I'm reading it, maybe one in which Jess weighs in as to how we could best work outside of the MGH box.
Yeah.
So the same idea that both of you are putting forward, that we actively engage Jess Lynn in whatever this process is of a broader set of inputs to the decision.
It'll bode well.
To date, we have not had her involved. She has been only involved through Linnea. So Linnea has conversations with her. Jess is aware of the hackathon, has become intrigued. Obviously, all the work that you did, Kimmery, around prioritizing tissue and testing options outside of MGH, outside of their normal process, all of that is visible to her. And what Linnea was sharing with me is that they are intrigued. She and Alice Shaw, Jesslyn and Alice Shaw, are both intrigued by this and seem to be interested in becoming more accepting and engaged. But it's been more at Linnea's prodding as opposed to other oncologists who've been obviously more actively engaged. So it's still a relationship that we're in flux. I copied, as you saw, I copied Jesslyn on these last couple of messages, and that's the first time I've done that. I have not approached her directly. I've never sent her an email or any contact because I also felt this need to engage her more directly at this point.
I think one thing we could do is call it an external tumor board, so
Okay.
Keep it in the context of what they would, in addition to what you're going to do internally at MGH, here are some candidates, or Linnea wishes to have an external tumor board as well with the following people, and would you be involved in that?
That's a good idea. It makes it less threatening. Peggy, you had something?
Yeah, I wonder if having, if it's possible to ask Raina McKay to reach out to those, Linnea's 2 doctors and say, I worked in this situation previously and, it was helpful, whatever it was that gives a doctor who's been through a hackathon with some overlapping people, as I could imagine, doctor to doctor versus, who knows, patients, advocates, whatever, coming in.
Okay.
And Raina McKay is, certainly well respected nationally. So
Yeah. Mechanically, Kimmery, I also been thinking about this. I'm not an expert in the content, but I am kind of a process consultant. And so 2 thoughts that I had was, and I think I already highlighted those. One would be get people into the Slack and just they can do it asynchronously. Whenever it suits their time, they can question and comment. We'd have conversations there 24/7, continuously, as soon as people can start and whenever they can end. I still like the notion of a Zoom call, and that means then synchronous. So it has to be scheduled. And it should be after we have the Keras data in hand, but as soon as possible. And I was just wondering, these are all, research clinicians. They're in their labs probably 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Should we run it on an evening or a weekend? That kind of thing. When we did the Bryce one, it was on a Tuesday evening. In the past, when I've worked with people in healthcare who work Monday through Friday, we ran things on weekends. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that's definitely how you'll get them. But even at that, aligning those planets can be difficult, especially now we're in a holiday. I mean, I can't emphasize how important timing is. In fact, I feel a little remiss that we didn't have this kind of a little bit better planned. Although we were all, not anticipating. We're so used to seeing Linnea so seemingly healthy on all these chats. So yeah, I think we were all just hoping for the best, but that's my concern, is just timing.
Well, we can, you can just declare, and then whoever shows up is whoever shows up. So do you think because we could just say next Saturday, like a week from tomorrow, we're going to have an event, so I don't know, the middle of the afternoon or something, and Eastern, and then, we could capture other time zones. And then if we did that, do you think the Keras results would be ready by then? I mean, I'm frustrated that we haven't heard from them, but it's been a couple weeks, so shouldn't we expect it?
They should be finished. And I don't know, Brad, I shot you one last email just before the call, but so Linnea must have had something in place with Citizen, something in writing that allowed Citizen to reach in to MGH to get her records. I wonder if that extends to this Keras result, and whether we don't have to bother Linnea to try to get these results herself if she's not feeling well, or to have to sign some paper again to release them to someone. I'm wondering if what Citizen has would allow them to get the Keras results. And then Linnea can work with them to give them the permission to share it with us, or those of us who want to have access to it. That's one avenue I thought of.
Hi, so I'm Robin. I'm on the clinical trials team. I'm the head of clinical trial services here at Citizen. I only just kind of recently joined, but was unfortunately I'm sorry that I'm joining this all very late, but happy to be a part of this. I will reach out on our end. Generally, if that hasn't been resulted yet, so if it's not actually resulted yet, that might be difficult, but I definitely will look into what we can do on our end and investigate that a little bit further.
So can I probe a little bit more around that? So so presumably Linnea signed something both with Citizen and with MGH to allow the two parties to to share information on her, about her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do these documents read any and all medical information, or just the requested information, or the following information?
It would be all records that we request, but I guess my concern is that she didn't have those resulted yet. Is that right? I know
Right.
that I'm kind of late to this, but I know that she hasn't had that resulted yet, right?
So yeah,
Um,
that's really my question is
mm.
that consent is given, is it for records to date and not?
It should be on resulted documents, but again, I can kind of look into that. I'm on the clinical trial ends of things, but my surgeon can reach out to our ClinOps group that is responsible for that. I would presume though that if that's not yet resulted and that's kind of just in the assessment and analysis phase and it hasn't been formally resulted, that would not be a record that would be accessible. But because that sounds like more of a case of needing to prioritize almost. She didn't receive anything from them yet, right? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Her doctors must have, her institution must have by now.
Oh, her institution has it.
Yeah.
Oh,
This
okay.
wouldn't go directly to Linnea. This would go to her physician.
Okay. So, and we don't know that Dr. Lynn has received, we just don't have any of that information from her. Is that correct?
I would, just based on timing, she should have.
Okay.
Been 2 weeks, and that's the processing time for this type of test.
Yep. Let me look into this on my end
But to your
and see what we can do.
Though, if this was not a record at the time of
Mm-hmm.
whatever permission you were given, then I'm afraid that the issue you just raised is probably the case, that this was not resulted. This was not something that her physician reviewed, signed off on, and had become a documented part of her medical record. So
Correct.
this isn't retrospective to you right now.
We can do an additional records request. And so in the case it is there, then we could start to do that. But yeah, again, it sort of depends on what the status of is of that actual report.
Do the additional request, do you need Linnea for that?
I do not know that for certain. Again, let me touch base with the ClinOps team and then we'll see where we can go from there.
Yeah. I may be able to speak here. I'm Tony. I'm one of the pathologists at Citizen. So I believe the request that Linnea did was all encompassing. Like we are like Citizen on behalf of her. We have access to all of her records. We just have to make the request, and it's automatically signed off on her end, and it doesn't have a cutoff date, so to speak.
Awesome.
So,
Okay.
yeah. So that. We just have to send in a request, and the limiting factor there will simply be
If it's resulted. Sure. Yeah.
So I will touch base with Robin and we'll get that request started. Like
Thanks,
ASAP.
Tony.
Yeah, no worries at all.
And then
Yeah, thanks, Tony. And the other person that I know is weighed in on some of this is Devin McGraw at Citizen. So she's an expert on sort of the legalities. So if you need to check on any of those bases, she's been very helpful as well.
So has Linnea given Citizen permission to release her results to anyone on this hackathon? So Brad, do you have access to her Citizen records, for example?
What we have done is that she is doing it on a case-by-case basis as a way to maintain some control over, or knowledge. I guess it's more about information than, so I do not, because I haven't really requested it, but others have, and she's then given her credentials to other people, but she's the gatekeeper.
Okay. And we would need someone from that group who has that permission. I'm just trying to make a workaround. So if we can't get to Dr. Lynn and we can't get to Linnea anytime soon, we can ask whoever Linnea gave Citizen permission.
Yeah.
No, because they can't give it to us either.
Right. I think Tony's on it, and it sounds like the permission may be broad enough to allow them to say, give us the latest.
Right, but they can't give it to us. Citizen can't turn around and give it to
give it to us. I see. Right.
We can look into let me on my end, I can work with Tony and we can look into who she did grant that for, and maybe providing that information will be a good starting point.
That person can't then turn around and give it to the greater group. That's the issue.
Correct. The other thing I was going to mention, this is sort of separate, but may be helpful, is that there's that cancer summary. I don't know if that if you previously discussed that with Sophia or Lysandra, but there's a cancer summary that is pulled from the abstraction process on her records, and it's a nice little chronology of events. And so I'm just trying to think through whether or not that might be useful to take to additional physicians, you know, as a starting point, just on her history as a list of.
It will be, and that would be
treatments that
part of the
she's received.
onboarding for any experts. That was,
Yeah.
that was the
And obviously that's just a starting point.
Right.
You need the full, you know,
There-
supportive discussion from Dr. Lynn.
There again, though, Brad, we don't have access to that.
Right.
So,
I'm wondering, since she has consented to us, to Citizen, releasing any and all of her documents to any organization that is a research affiliate with us. I'm wondering to what extent this hackathon is a research affiliate with Citizen. I don't know. I'd have to consult with legal. Last thing I want to do is burden her or this group with any HIPAA concerns.
but at
Yeah.
the same time, she needs to make that call.
Yeah, okay. Well, hopefully she'll go from incapacitated to capacitated and can unlock this. Yeah.
And knowing
But
that
I think there's something here to learn about this in the future. Like if I was in that, I think that if we were asking her about this 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, she'd be like, how do I ensure that, you know, what's centralized in Citizen can now go out to this group?
Yep. And Kimmery made a similar point. It's consistent with the philosophy, which is open data, open communications, open, open, open. But if you don't have it codified, what I'm learning in some kind of written documentation, then when push comes to shove and Linnea's bottleneck or the choke point in this process, we can all get blocked up.
Right.
Yeah, so I had suggested to Brad offline at one point that as part of hackathons moving forward, maybe it's a good idea to have an upfront conversation around if and when a situation like we're in right now occurs, that there's a designated either participant from the hackathon or a family member or friend or someone who has the ability to request these records or this information on behalf of someone who has the power to do that. So that requires a written document, obviously. And you know, I've wished so many times since I started in this hackathon that I could just call MGH on Linnea's behalf so that and take some of that weight off of her and really sort of grill and drill, like, you know, the pathologist as to how many tumor cells are in that block before you send it off and stuff like that. I mean, that's what I'm good at. So
I'm going to interrupt you. That's exactly where we need to go, Kimmery. You guys probably know, but MGH is a very old school hospital. I don't even think they have voicemail. The major physicians that I know a number of all have an assistant that answers their phone. They don't have voicemail. So if it was me, I forget the name you said, Dr. Lynn, I would call her right after we get off this call, Brad, if you had time, and find a way to get on her calendar. Her assistant will know whether she can be available next Saturday, but it just seems, I'm with Kimmery on this. This is too urgent. I think we need to get her assistant to get to her. One thing to find out if Dr. Lynn has access to the Citizen data, for one, just so that she can be comparing whatever we get from this group. But I really think given the urgency that MGH is the answer for the next step in every way. And I would vote for Kimmery to be the person to call it, hands down, anyone. But I think we need to reach out to that doctor and just tell her we're here if she knows. I don't know. You remember what's different is in the Bryce call, we had his physician in San Diego on the call. So I would recommend the MGH and find out if they have the Citizens data and find out if we can get on whatever midnight time it is to talk to Dr. Lynn for even 15 minutes and just see where they are. and it might guide our efforts. There may be things going on we're not aware of since she's not on this call. So I know I'm a broken record and I'm not a clinical person, but that's my 2 cents.
The
Thank
other,
you, Jeff.
the other
Does
thing,
she, yeah, does she have a medical power of attorney person in her life? That would be another person to link and circle into this.
although power of attorney wouldn't really come into play at this point yet.
The
So,
term
Wow.
Grace Portovano uses is a care partner. Grace has trained me, so she refers to that kind of person as a care
Care
partner.
partner.
It just occurred to me, Jeff, as you were speaking, that even if we did have our entire, let's call it tumor board, external tumor board ready to go, we still would need Linnea to sign something to give them all the authority to discuss her case and do it in front of a bunch of non-medical practitioners. So this is why it's like, to your point, Peggy, I mean, that's what a medical power of attorney could do on her behalf, but she's not incapacitated to that point where a medical power of attorney would kick in yet, would be my understanding of that.
And we may be able to influence whatever MGH is doing rather than having to supplant them, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay, Kimmery, do you want to call Dr. Lynn or do you want me to?
Well, I would be from out of the blue. She doesn't know who I am or what I'm all about. And at least you've sent an email to her once. So my gut tells me that she would at least connect you
Okay.
to Linnea directly. And I would.
It's going to be a real simple message that these parallel activities need to be joined and is she game for that and how might we do it? So I'll just open up the relationship, nothing really content necessarily.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if there's any email exchange, if you want to CC me on that for follow-up,
Sure, certainly, yeah,
we can double team.
Okay. So let me get into turn this in sort of actionable and other next steps in terms of how do we engage these people. So there's obviously some groundwork that needs to be done, both in terms of written authorization from Linnea, in terms of prepping anybody that we would invite. You may have seen, I think I've shared with all of you the list of names that would be invited that Kimmery started. And they're categorized by different types of people. In the spirit of the hackathon, my bias is to be as open as possible and engage as many people as possible. When we did it for Bryce, it was a handful. It was like 5 or 6 people. And that worked really well. It was what Bryce felt was the best, most valuable part of the hackathon for him because of the interaction between the different experts. I'd like, though, to make it as broadly engaging as possible. And so that means, again, the Slack is one place where that can happen, which is sort of crowd open. And then if we have an event, as we were saying, maybe running it on a Saturday. And then my proposal is to have sort of a panel of, like, if we had a session like this, there'd be a panel with their video on and they would have audio on and they would sort of be authorized to speak and everybody else would be mostly an observer status who could comment through the chat. So that there's the ability to see the conversation and comment or contribute to the conversation by a large group, but also it's somewhat just practically manage who's speaking. So that's my proposal. Any thoughts on that design or any other comments about how we might engage, be both broad but engaging?
I like the idea of putting stuff on Slack and getting people to actually look at that prior to a live discussion. The one thing I just thought about is if you have these physicians and clinicians on a call and you're recording it, I think you're going to get very different advice than if you don't record it. Because I think there'll just be some sort of fear and paranoia about suggesting far out there ideas or anything like that. So I just would consider maybe not recording the session, even though that's a loss of good information. But if we had some really diligent note takers, perhaps scheduled ahead of time, that would be good. But I don't know, my fear is that physicians are going to be very, very reserved if it's recorded.
Okay. Allie, can you comment? Because you're one of the kinds of people that we would really want on that conversation. And so what do you think would work well from your point of view?
I actually, maybe I'm not the best one to speak about how the system works. I just really wish that, when we were saying we need to talk to the doctor and engage the team, that we could start those conversations sooner, because, as far as I personally go about things, I just knock on all the doors and I see which ones may open up or give me information. And I just think that we need to get the care team to talk to us, to talk to anybody here, really. So from that point on, when there is a meeting that's kind of like a tumor board where clinical decisions are made, I would of course be happy to join and summarize anything from me or our company CareMatch to guide decision support. But I think it's important to just make it one important kind of meeting that counts. I believe that we should all, take some steps to make an effort. It's really more of a, I guess, logistics thing, but I don't know what's the best way to do it. My personal style is just to knock on all the doors when the situation calls for it. What can I say?
Grace, you've been active in thinking through this. Any comments you would have?
I apologize for my tardiness. I got caught up in actually another meeting with another oncologist on end of life situation. I'm going to have to catch up. Can you be more specific on the question and discussion? Because I didn't catch the beginning of the conversation.
Okay. Sorry to put you on the spot. I saw that you came in.
Sure.
Yeah, we've been talking about how to fast track our path to a review board. And we want to get the CARES report in hand because it probably has critical information on what's going to be the best treatment. We think that it's likely that that CARES report is with MGH and Jess Lynn, but we need to figure out how we can make it accessible to this larger community. But it's more a question of how fast can we convene and start the conversation on the best next treatment for Linnea.
Were there short-term solutions discussed to manage Linnea's current level of pain and palliative care and potential radiation? Is that already in the works?
No, we have not talked about that.
Okay, I'm not sure if that's applicable for now, but I'm happy to speak offline. That was a major concern for me right now. And then the report, we have to escalate. So I understand that the back and forth about getting the report, that's still a barrier.
Yes, we need to figure out, and Kimmery's been very eloquent about the challenges we face just working with the privacy regulations to make the CARES report available. Linnea's a sort of a bottleneck on the process. She can release her data to whomever she wants, but if she's incapacitated, it's not getting out. So we've been talking about workarounds for that.
Oh, that's definitely a tough conversation. So there's an advanced directive. I don't know if who she has as her representative. It can be something as simple as her literally at the bedside, typing an email, typing a note, authorizing that with the privacy officer, whatever ICU she's at right now, and forwarding that to CARES.
I told them already, Grace, your term you've taught me is a care partner.
Yes. So I didn't want to pry, but if she has an advanced directive, we need to loop someone in on decisions that are continuing to aggressively happen in the background as she's getting the care she needs right now. So her care team at the hospital needs to be aware of what's happening in the background. And Linnea does need to authorize that. It has to be something simple in writing with her signature. It does not have to be anything fancy or notarized. But a consent for, and does CARES have a consent for release of results? Sometimes that's the easiest thing, to literally print it and bring it to her bedside.
Yeah, I'm not sure CARES has that because this is an unusual situation, I think. And
Then Kimmery, actually, the easier thing is having Linnea write it and sign it if she can, to release those results. And if it's Kimmery to you, or to make it, we have to make it as simple as possible. Designated one point person is key, because if we say in general to the hackathon, if we say in general to the hospital, that's a mess. It has to be going from a person, Linnea, to another point person. That's all we need. So what's the shortest route to do that?
well, I think what you suggested is perfect, but then there's a little bit of a snowball effect, because if she releases it to one person here, then we also need her permission to release it to the rest of us, which is probably an easier thing to handle.
Mhm.
But that's where we are right now. And I wish that she could just sort of ask a nurse who's looking in on her right now to, maybe, I don't know, Brad, maybe we should type something up, send it to, I don't know if she's like literally able to text or not. I don't.
Yeah. So I sent her a text saying that we're urgently looking to get the release, as you and I discussed on email, to that effect. And I think you're right. We should now broaden that beyond the KERAS test to just, as you and Grace have been suggesting, that it's, I wrote down something like release of results to a point person if she doesn't already have such a point person.
You know, so I've done this a few times for friends and family, and I think probably the best thing to do is for her to do the institution-specific form saying, so-and-so has rights to my medical records, and speak to the physician on my behalf. That's usually what I do. And then I just get on the phone with the doctor and I go through everything. You know, what did the KERAS results say? Could you send me a copy? You know, all that, rather than us doing this piecemeal, like I want the KERAS result to so-and-so. It's just, someone needs to be a proxy. Someone needs to be able to ask the tough questions and keep the process rolling. We can't expect Linnea to be doing that. And frankly, that I don't know how she's been doing it all this time, honestly.
So Brad, your background looks like Maine. Is that Maine behind you?
Not behind me, it's over there.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I'm 30 minutes from Mass General. If I need to go down there, I will.
Hey now.
So if we get a hold of Linnea and you want me to go in there, she doesn't have a care partner, I'll be there in a half hour. So
Okay.
I think it's that urgent.
With a piece of paper for her to sign. It's actually a matter of getting, like, I wonder even if there's something online, or we could call to get like a generic form to fill out, because a lot of times it's just a very generic form.
I do want to say, you know, I can't disclose anything publicly. She does have a healthcare proxy, and I have records of that.
Okay.
So I will probably talk offline, given the urgency of this, to see if this can be tracked.
Great, perfect.
Thank you.
Grace, I'd like your insights. I don't have a clinical background. I've been pushing for us to get in touch with Dr. Lynn, her attending physician at MGH, or one of her interdisciplinary care team. So I'd like to get your insights on that, if you don't mind. I see you have your hand up too.
I have a number of concerns. So Tony, I think that was Tony. Thank you for saying that there possibly is documentation for representative, but I'm thinking bigger picture, and from my experience of doing this, yes, the report, but I always think, what if something turns for the worst? The report is the least of our concerns. What if there is something actionable in the report, and how do we act on that? How do we get consent for treatment? Who is making that authorization? Because there will be a consent for treatment necessary. So these are all things that, if we have not talked about, need to be discussed and addressed. Jeff, if you're going to drive down to go and see her, you're going to need to wrestle with the COVID-19 no visitor policies.
Right.
They're not letting anyone in. They don't care if you're vaccinated or have a mask. They're not letting anyone in past the Starbucks or the cafeteria. So you can try that sneak route. You will be.
They're allowing
security.
one visitor now.
Sorry?
They're allowing ones that they changed the policy now. They allow one visitor to come in.
But she's in the ICU.
Yeah, that's different. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But I may be able to get, if Dr. Lynn has an assistant or something, I may be able to have her meet me in a cafeteria or something if we need. it sounds like she already has a designated care partner.
Yes, she does.
Hey, Brad, does she have a sister or a family or anybody that's kind of communicating with you, or are you just operating in the black?
To my knowledge, I do not know of any family members who are participating as caregivers.
So but I mean, like, do you know anybody that is talking to her right now, or like you just like?
No, I do not.
Okay, so you're completely unplugged. We're completely unplugged. Okay.
The message she sent me by text yesterday is the medium and tone of the conversation that we have.
Okay.
Anything else, Grace?
You asked about getting in touch with Dr. Lynn. Is there radio silence there?
No, we have not. There can't be radio silence, so we haven't ever established radio connection. So to date, I have never had any interaction with Jesslyn. I've been respectful of her communicating through Linnea. And what we agreed before you got on was that at Jeff's suggestion that I call Dr. Lynn just to make the connection to say, how can we help? Because we've been disconnected, not connected.
That certainly can't hurt. I'm happy to help in any which way. I think having the link and the records, is there an email for her that may help as a
Yeah,
intro and showing the hackathon activity? And then
she has been. And Grace, I would be happy if you would prefer to make the outreach to Dr. Lynn. You're welcome to do it on the hackathon's behalf, because obviously you're more experienced at this process. I have no pride in doing that, but I will be happy to do it if you would like to do it.
I have no problem doing that. If who are the point people that can bring me sort of up to speed on what we need to convey? Is that you and Kimmery? Is there someone else?
Yeah,
Because I would need a quick touch base after this call.
Yeah, I think so. It's some of the email. It's mainly about it was triggered by getting the CARES report access as an input to the external review board. It was triggered by that, but then the conversation today broadened beyond if Linnea is incapacitated and she's not able to provide authorization to her medical history records on Citizen or other things, we need this conversation about perhaps a broader care partner role so that's you've heard everything. There's nothing you haven't heard, I don't think, that we've talked about.
Here's my concern. We need the person that is the personal representative. We do not have reach over them, so they have to be in contact with us. If that is documented on file at the hospital, there is no way that they're going to listen to our outreach, from my experience. So we need to have that person collaborating with us. I'm happy to speak to whoever this is. I want to make sure that they're on board. I don't want any tension to arise that can cause fragmentation in communication or any stress for Linnea at this point. With a nurse saying that these people are trying to call and your personal representative is trying to call. So I want to keep this as neutral as possible. And the easiest thing is to get in contact with whoever that documented person.
Okay, I can text Linnea and say, we need to know, which I'd already written down, who's your care point person? And can we speak to them? Is that the next step?
Brad, if you're able to reach Linnea, maybe it's easier to ask her to give
Consent.
well that and to give them permission to speak to Grace on her behalf.
Okay.
So, I mean, it seems like there are several things we need from Linnea right now, and how do we make it as easy for her as humanly possible and official enough that MGH will honor it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a good point of attack. And so that would, until that happens, we'll put on hold a direct outreach to Dr. Lynn. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think legally that's what we need to do if there is indeed a documented personal health representative or proxy that's on file at the hospital.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that identifying who that person is super important if Linnea knows that. And then I think that I mean, literally, I would assume that she would be open to whatever that consent that you need. So somebody can go out there and draw it and sign it or whatever that she needs. That would be super important. The final point I'll mention is I know that she's very close to Diana Wag. I mean, we need to identify who's like the brother, the cousin, the whatever that is next to her. I mean, it can't be that she's just isolated. So maybe if Linnea provides who that is, I think it's important, or that personal representative. And Diana Wag, I know that they're very close. Diana Wag has EGFR, and she's been 15 years with this. And I know that they live a street away, and that's her partner in crime. That's the only person I can think of that could be because I don't know Linnea's family, but that's the only. And I met with Diana once, but I know they operate very closely because they share the same thing, and they've been around doing this for the past 15 years.
It's a great idea. It's a great idea. So and Grace, if you're still on,
Yes.
I just want to clarify one thing. We're talking about medical proxy and, you know, I think Peggy had mentioned earlier too, power of attorney, but we're probably not, we're not there yet. I think the way I'm thinking about this is just adding another name on to, hey, I give this person permission to discuss my case with you, Dr. Lynn.
So that's a HIPAA authorization, which is fine.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that HIPAA authorization takes a back seat if any
Right.
complication, she spikes a fever, any complication where she needs to be sedated, God forbid, emergency procedure, her
Right.
pleural effusion, right? So that's what I worry, and I want to make sure that this person is on board with what we're talking about.
I think they're two separate issues, honestly. I think first and foremost, we need to get HIPAA authorization. And then at the same time, we should work on that second issue, which is making sure that that proxy knows all about the hackathon and
Yes.
doesn't feel like we're stepping on any toes and things like that. But I think, I mean, Linnea can grant the HIPAA authorization to as many people in the world as she wants, despite having a medical proxy, right? So
Yep.
I think we need to do both, I guess is what I'm saying. And the one that's most critical right now, at least for getting the CARES report results and the external advisory board assembled is that HIPAA authorization.
Do we have a time frame on when the report will be available?
We believe it should be available to her physician already, just by the passage of time,
Okay.
but we don't know. And
So while we're speaking live theater here, I texted Linnea saying it would help if we could speak with your designated point person proxy for your care. Could we connect them with Grace Cordovano to represent the hackathon to work on your behalf? It is preparatory to talking to Jess Lynn. She responded, of course, I need to figure out who that person is. 1.5 liters removed.
Wow.
So she is not remembering.
So, okay, yeah. I literally have the documents in front of me. This is such a tough position to be in.
Yeah,
You know, Brad,
Okay, so here's another thing I'm going to bring up. How recent is that document? Because life circumstances happen and things change. So we need to be mindful. So we could either text Linnea a screenshot of that and saying, is this still valid? Because it very well may not be. That also could be the case. And she may want to authorize someone else, which is very important for her to do and us to know.
Exactly. I'm wondering if, okay, since I'm part of Citizen and I'm authorized to see all of this stuff, I'm wondering if I can literally just take a screenshot of this document and if that jogs her memory. I don't, or because I can't.
Why would it be recent if she just filled that out for the Citizen authorization? That would be very recent, wouldn't it?
Well, this is specific to MGH, and it confirms that MGH does have a healthcare proxy on file.
That's important.
Okay.
But it just
a suggestion. You actually don't even need to take a screenshot of that. We can just relay that you have one on file at MGH. They're required to pull that up and confirm it with her. That might be the quickest route. It gets you off the hook of needing to get authorization. Can you screenshot it? Is this HIPAA? That would be my thing. texting Linnea saying you have one on file. We need to make sure that that's recent. Can they pull it up on screen for you? And if there's any delay, then we can say Citizen has one on file. Do you want a copy?
I think that's the best approach.
Good idea, yeah.
Okay, Tony, her text message, you obviously want to say, hi, this is Tony from Citizen, but 603-738-9730. 603-738-9730.
Okay, 603-738-9730.
Correct.
Okay, sounds good.
So then, once we have established that, then it's a matter of hooking up this person with Grace? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, and it sounds like if Linnea doesn't even know who this person is, they can't be very active. Right?
Or she just can't remember at the moment.
Well, I need to figure out who that person is.
Concerning either way, you know?
Yeah, in other words, like we could provide a real proxy because she doesn't have an active proxy currently. And so maybe Grace will step into that role.
It's encouraging that she got back to you so quickly. I mean, that's very encouraging, I think, you know, in terms of her condition and in terms of her awareness.
Treatment.
That's very good.
So maybe while she's online then.
Yeah, you could be sitting here wondering why she didn't respond and nothing. So now you've got at least a bit of data.
Yes.
If she's responsive, Brad, maybe you could she ask the nurse? Could she ask the nurse or tell the nurse she wants to fill out a HIPAA authorization form, naming one of us, some of us?
Okay.
More than one of us. Because like I said, I'm more than happy with her authorization to get on the horn with her doctor and talk biomarker jazz and all that stuff. So.
Okay, I'm going to say, I'm typing in, if you have energy, could you please ask a nurse to have you sign a HIPAA authorization form for Kimmery Kulig and Grace Cordovano? How's that?
Great. And I guess they'll need our contact information for that as well.
Yeah.
All right, I just sent a message as well, and hopefully she doesn't think it's spam. I mean, her name, so.
Yeah.
Hey, Brad, and if in that message to Linnea, if you can find out like who the nurse is or the, you know, kind of Lynn's like right-hand person that will be able to, you know, kind of navigate a little bit if Lynn isn't available.
Yeah. I'm conscious of the time. This conversation is not exactly what I expected, but we, and as usual, the crowd rises to the occasion and steers us in a direction. Thanks all for this, I don't know, this sort of fire drill, you know, responding where I like to refer this as improv theater. We're responding to stuff as it happens and trying to do the best we can. Before we wrap up, is there any other closing suggestions, comments? And I guess we should keep this going in the Slack. That's probably the best way to maintain currency as we deal with this rapidly evolving situation.
Yeah, and if you hear anything that Linnea has gotten these HIPAA authorization forms, I guess there's no way Grace and I will know. So we'll have to nag her about that, whether it's been signed or not.
Yeah.
That we can just directly call her doctor, put in calls to her.
I mean,
doctor.
and the hope would be that she's vibrant, and once she gets her 1.5 liters removed, the pain is gone. She starts feeling better, comes off of, you know, the antibiotics start working, her pneumonia is under control, and she'll, you know, be back and communicating. So hopefully we'll be able to move it forward.
Hey, Brad.
Yes.
Hi, John Novak here. And I just want to throw out there and thinking of contingencies in case there's some kind of document at her home or somebody referenced her good friend Diana close by. I'm about 45 miles north of her home, 40 miles north. And again, in the event that it's like, hey, there's something in the front drawer to sign off on or make a copy of or whatever, just know that I could do that. So hoping that's not needed, but in some circumstances, it absolutely may be.
Thank you very much, John, for that offer. Anyone else before we wrap? Okay, thanks again. Stay tuned. This is like, I feel like I'm on CNN, and this is a rapidly evolving situation, and we'll keep on top of it and see what happens. Thank you all.